Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Abe Hughes here, cruise director on board our Virtual of the Seas, our pretend cruise ship going to very real destinations. And welcome to a special interview that I have set up. And I think you're going to find it very enjoyable and very funny, and essentially a little peek behind the curtain of comedy. And this is with a great friend of mine and a very well known individual and a character in itself within the Royal Caribbean family. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Simeon Kirkiles. How are you, Simeon?
I'm great, Abe. How are you?
I'm fantastic and always good, especially whenever we have the opportunity to chat face to face, even if it's virtually. So
That's right.
tell us and all of your fans out there, where are you in the world today?
Well, Abe, as you know, I live in Florida, but I'm visiting my sister up in North Carolina.
Oh,
And
excellent.
I've been here for a few months now, and it's really beautiful. It's a little sleepy town called Moyock. You probably never heard of it, but
No.
it's really nice, and nobody lives here. Nobody lives here, Abe.
But I understand you got yourself a margarita machine, which is going to help you through these times.
Yes, one of the first things I bought when I got here was a Margaritaville machine. It's fabulous. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to be in quarantine for another 6 months, buy yourself one. You'll thank me later.
Which is interesting because I've known you for over a decade, and I think I've
Yes.
watched you drink maybe two alcoholic beverages in the entire time that I've known you. You don't actually respond to how many drinks I've had in your presence, but to see you get a margarita machine, I had to smile a little bit about that. But actually, let's go
Oh,
back to when we met originally, because we have a bit of history together. And
yeah.
tell the world, because everyone knows you and recognizes you as Simeon the comedian, the comedy club host that was on Oasis for a number of years, along with, of course, the resident comedy club host on board Harmony and on board Symphony. And basically, anywhere the company needs a funny man, you seem to arrive. So, how did your Royal Caribbean journey begin?
Well, it began actually, I was working in a theme park right before I joined Royal. I was working in a little circus show there, and a lot of the people who worked at the theme park were ex-Royal headliners. A lot of guys who used to sing, and these were back in the day. And so now some of these guys were just brought on as collaborative people into the park. And they said, you'd be really good at Royal Caribbean, hosting events and maybe going a cruise director route. And I said, oh, that sounds like a good thing. So I contacted Royal, and they hired me, and I was brought on immediately. It was really quick.
That was
It
awesome.
probably
And
took,
And
yeah.
that was on board Mariner of the Seas 2007.
Yes, 2000, summer of 2007.
And that's actually where we ran into each other for the very first time, where I was cruise director. You were part of the cruise director staff. But for those of you who have sailed Royal Caribbean, and most of the people watching this have, cruise director staff is the activities, the bingos, the trivias, the game shows here and there. But the cruise director that I took over for, Drew Devine,
Mhm.
he came to me in my handover note saying, as I'm like, hey, how are the cruise director staff? Who's on board? Who's new? Who's experienced, et cetera? And he's like, well, we have a guy named Simeon. And and I knew at that moment in time, I was like, oh boy, this could go one of two ways.
Yeah.
Okay, is this Simeon a handful? Is he a rock star? What's up with Simeon? And he goes, I can't really describe Simeon other than the fact that he's Simeon, because you were part of the cruise director staff, but hosting a trivia or doing a captain's cocktail party, introducing guests to the captain, that was not exactly your forte. You were,
No.
because of your experience clowning, you were essentially a personality on board the ship.
Yeah, I kind of made things my own, maybe a little bit too much.
Well, I remember in
I,
some ways going like, wait a minute, this guy, what is he doing on a formal night? Because you were dressed as in a tuxedo, but you were actually, as you were also in full clown attire and with the hats, and you would go and basically just make people smile.
Right. Yeah. And I found the secret to making people smile is honesty. So I think that's part of my success. Like when like, for example, remember line dancing by the pool?
Oh, yes.
Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I used to host line dancing. But I wouldn't start it like a normal, hi, everybody, welcome to the poolside. My name's Simeon, I'm part of your cruise director staff. We're going to do some line dances. Let's go. I wouldn't start like that. I don't even know if you ever heard me do this. I used to go up and go, ladies and gentlemen, but moments ago I was in a deep slumber. And the good Lord called upon me and said, Simeon, I want you to roll out of bed, make your way up to the pool deck in 98 degrees, and teach these people the ways of the line dance.
And I can only imagine those that showed up to the poolside line dancing going, what are we in for, and how is this going to work?
Yeah, so I was a little I wasn't exactly corporate, but I think that's part of what helped me go along, putting my own stamp on stuff and having fun with it at the same time.
We briefly chatted before this, and we were gonna try and keep it to a a short time, but I have a feeling we're gonna go down to a rabbit hole of memory lane. But I also think that it would be funny or fun for people to just hear some of the stories. One of the other stories before we go off of your cruise director path was on a formal night as a clown. Do you remember the air cannon?
Oh, I I love the air cannon. Oh,
So
we had this you've seen them probably at malls.
yeah, so explain what the air cannon is and what you would do with said air cannon.
So it's this little plastic thing, and it's got a little hole in it, and then you pull this little bag, and it pushes the air out of it, and it shoots a ball like 20 feet, and it just hits people in the head, and you can
But it's
make
just
like
air.
little,
It's air.
it's just air. Yeah, it's just air. Just the way that it's constructed, the air pops out of this, and you'll just see it hit people's poof like their hair. So I would take that and go and sit with guests in the different lounges. I remember the pub was a good one on the promenade. We would all sit there and shoot people as they walked by. And I'll never forget. I was with I brought it into the office, and I got Ken Rush.
Ken Rush. Yeah.
Ken Rush is legendary. And so I was sneaking around the corner, and I shot Ken, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm a fan of that."
I could totally see Ken doing that because he's probably like my hair, my hair. And speaking of hair, one of the one of the best was also formal night out on the Royal Promenade. You had this air cannon, and you would be hanging out where they were taking the formal pictures. And there would be, a nice family, a couple that was there, like ready to take their photo, and then the woman's hair would just go. Now, I don't know if it was ever timed properly with the actual photo being taken, unless, of course, you camped out in the photo gallery to see, but that was hilarious. So, moving forward from your cruise director staff days, this was before Oasis and the Oasis class ships with the comedy club was built. Um, Now, from my recollection, and keep me honest on this,
Mhm.
we had, when Oasis was coming out, it was a completely different concept of a ship with the seven
Right,
neighborhoods and with the way that the shows and the entertainment was going to work. And prior to Oasis of the Seas, the comedians would come on board the ship and they would perform a welcome aboard or a farewell show and then a late night comedy. And it would all be done in the theater. And with
right,
the theaters the size that they were, you only needed one or two shows to cover the entire ship. But with Oasis coming out with a comedy club, we needed to do a show. We need to have multiple shows in a week. And before Oasis even came out, the beta ship to test out the comedy club was Mariner.
right.
And Ken Rush was taking out the Oasis as a cruise director, and I was on board as cruise director on board Mariner, and we're going through all the different concepts, and we wanted to try this out. Well, in a case of having a comedy club set up and doing, a 7-day cruise, let's say, just for easy math, two shows a night, so 14 shows, cruise director is not able to be there for every single show to host. So we jogged around a few different ideas. Would it be a activities manager? Would it be part of the cruise director staff? And I just remember having the conversation with Ken, just being like, "Oh, cruise director staff, I got a guy. His name is Simeon. And he's fantastic." And essentially you became just the host of the show, and you were not a comedian at the time.
No, I was actually doing at the time that we were testing it, I was playing piano.
Oh yes.
Right.
I totally remember. Oh gosh. And again, this is the multi-talented Swiss Army knife, which is Simeon. Is we had a piano player on board, the Mariner, who needed to leave for some reason. I can't remember. It was a
Yeah.
schooner bar entertainer, and we didn't have a piano player. And here I am. I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't have a schooner bar entertainer and everything else. And Simeon's like, oh, I can play the piano. We're like, of course you can. And you became a schooner bar entertainer because you're a killer piano player. You know the words to, 95% of the words to every song imaginable, but you're just an entertainer and you made people smile and have fun. So that's right. You were our schooner bar entertainer slash
Right.
cruise director slash clown slash Simeon.
Right. So I remember I would play in the dining rooms too. And then after I finished that set, I would go up and we would do the test run for the comedy club.
And the comedy club itself, it obviously proved to be successful because
Yeah.
Oasis, the comedy club setup, and for those of you who are wondering where that show was set up, is we actually set up the Deck 14 Viking Crown Lounge as the comedy club over the course of several weeks, or if not a couple of months, where we did this trial run, and it worked well. Oasis comes out, and obviously it needs a comedy club host, and that's where you were chosen to be part of the takeout of Oasis of the Seas, and you finally got your own title as well. You weren't just called Simeon.
Yeah, you put my last name in too, Kirkiles.
So you became the comedy host on board Oasis, and you were there for how many years?
For at least 6.
6 years.
At least
So
6
that's
because I had to cover Hairspray.
oh, that's right. Oh yeah. By the way, folks, not only is he a piano player and a comedian and a clown and a cruise director staff and an excellent line dance instructor, but you also were the understudy in Hairspray
Yeah.
for Edna and Wilbur.
Right. Both
The,
parents.
the two leads, or two of the main leads of the show, you also, and you stepped in and played both of those characters multiple
Yeah.
occasions.
I on Oasis and on Symphony recently.
And on Symphony. So again, multi-talented individual because you're a great singer and an actor and everything that goes on. You are truly a remarkable
Oh,
remarkable man.
thank you, Abe.
So on board Oasis, because when you first came on, and I remember seeing you in the very, very early days, you were not a comedian in a sense of going up, and you wouldn't go and do 5 or 10 minutes of stand up before introducing the next host. You just would go up there and welcome everybody, and here's this, here's that, welcome to the stage, the next comedian. And
Yeah. Yeah.
what I think would be interesting for our viewers to listen to a little bit is kind of how you build an act.
Well, I will say that I firmly believe stand up is the hardest of probably any medium of art to do. I mean, it is so difficult. As someone who worked as a musician and a singer and an actor, you're doing somebody else's, song or their lyrics or their script. But stand up, it's you, and you're being judged solely by you.
Yeah.
It's like you go see a production of Phantom, everybody's, oh, it's a nice cast of Phantom.
Well, I mean, and just break it down as simple as can be. When you go out and whether it's on the ship or arena shows, there could be a rock concert with towers of lights and amplifiers and speakers and pyrotechnics and the crowd and an entire band and sound and light techs and everything that goes along with putting on a concert. And then you could have the same arena with 18,000 people, and there would be a stand-up comedian, whoever, choose, pick your, okay, Jerry Seinfeld, whatever. And all he has is a microphone and maybe a
That's it.
spotlight, and that's it.
That's all you have. Yeah, it's terrifying. And the interesting thing with stand-up is like what I was kind of referring to with Phantom. I'm just using that as an example. People expect it to be the show. They expect it to be Phantom. They expect it to be good. Now with stand-up, there's kind of this thing people come into a show with, well, let's see if this guy's funny. Let's see if he can make us laugh.
Yeah.
So you already have a hurdle to get over to win those people over. So that was the first step, is how do I win over an audience, even as a host, to like me before I even do jokes? So it comes with being honest. That's the first step, is being honest. Like if you don't want to be there one night and you say that, people will laugh at it. Because if you walk up on stage and go, isn't it great? Aren't you excited to be here? People are like, okay. But if you walk up and go, oh, this again, it's just funny. That it took me a while to figure out what is funny. What do people find funny? And sometimes even if you want to be there, acting like you don't gets a big laugh. I would say writing comedy just comes from observation. I don't sit down and say, I'm going to write a joke. That never happens. You see something and then you go, wow, that's really funny. And then you kind of write the story on stage. You test it out and you just tell them what happened. A perfect example of that is a joke can write itself. Do you remember the cereal story that I tell when the guy asked for Special K?
Oh,
This guy
yes.
this is a true story. So you didn't even need to write it. A man was having breakfast and he asked for Special K. So the waiter brings him the box and he calls the waiter back and says, this is false advertising because on the box there's pictures of fresh cut strawberries. So he made the waiter go back and cut strawberries and put them in the box. We couldn't believe it. And then come out and pour it into the bowl. Now the waiter also brought a box of Frosted Flakes. And when the guy went to touch the box, the waiter was like, be careful, there's a tiger in the box. Like you can't write that. It's just something you see. So, it's a combination of all kinds of things, I guess, from writing to see.
There are, and there's hardly any comedy to be observed on board a ship. So that's got to be different. And I know exactly what you're talking about of writing things into your material, because Simeon and I were on board probably Symphony when we went to lunch at Jamie's Italian.
Yes.
And this is no word of a lie. There was a gentleman, and I apologize if you happen to be watching this right now, but he probably is not. But excuse me, waiter. Excuse me, waiter. He had his ice cream, and he began to complain to the waiter, saying the ratio between the milk and cream is way off, or the ice and the cream is way off. I don't know what he was really talking about, but of course the waiter is so nice. It's like, I'm so sorry. That got a different ratio of cream to ice. Anyway, and that night you went and did about 2 or 3 minutes on this conversation, and it killed. It was absolutely hysterical. Now you added a couple of other ratios to the mix that you were talking about, but needless to say, the comedy itself is around you. And if you happen to be on a ship with Simeon, you might just make it into the comedy show if you say something silly enough.
Yeah, probably. I like going out into the crowd because I'm there so much.
Yeah.
I Part of
And
my problem was I was writing too much. There gets to a point where all I was doing was talking about the ship because I was living on ships for 10 months a year for over a decade. And so my only observations were coming from living on a ship.
and
like
that's in a way, I don't want to say that that's a cop out, but it's an easy way to build an act. But one of the other parts of you building your material, because 10 minutes of material can take years to develop.
yes.
Because we didn't see each other because you were on Oasis for the longest time, and I was on different ships, and I was working shoreside and everything else. And I didn't see you personally in 5 years do any type of stand up. And I came back on and I'm going, oh, Simeon is a comedian. And you've developed so many parts of not just working on ships, but also all the observations on land. So congratulations to you continuing to build because you're no longer just a cruise director, staff, and a line dance host. You are a true
Oh.
comedian, my friend.
Yeah, and Royal actually kind of pushed me out of the nest to do it, which, I'm very thankful for. I never would have done it. Had it not been for Royal, I never would be doing stand-up comedy right now. Royal were the people who were saying, you need to be doing this. And I was very doubtful. I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yes, this is your calling. So Royal were the people that were like, you should be a full-time comic on our rotation. And so that's what's happened within the last few years.
It's
I'm more,
fantastic.
yeah, it's great.
And gosh, it's funny is I actually wrote a bunch of notes down here of what we wanted to talk about, and here we are already at I don't know how many minutes in, but and I don't think I asked you any of those questions. But
Okay.
what's what's next for you, Simeon? Are you just kind of hanging out? You going to be heading back down to South Florida here soon? Or are you just waiting for our time
I'm
back
gonna,
on board?
yeah, I'm gonna stay in North Carolina, because the county that I'm in right now only has 7 cases of COVID. 7.
Well, that's a good
So,
place to be.
and normally in Florida, I live in Broward, where it's
Now, the
so.
population of the town that you're in is only 15, so technically, it's
It really is. Do you know there's one pizza place here within 20 miles?
one pizza place.
One pizza place. Do you know what that's like for a fat man in in confinement? It's horrible.
Well, as long as you have your margarita machine, I think you're going to be fine.
Oh, and I went, this is actually really funny. Speaking of margaritas, I went into they have an ABC store here. So I went in because I needed, I don't know, I don't know, but I needed grenadine. And so I was like, hi. I walk in, I'm like, hi, do you guys have grenadine? And the guy, I swear to God, he goes, grenadine? Ain't never sold that, ain't never will.
I can only imagine you walking into an ABC store. Hi.
Hi, I'm looking for grenadine. Grenadine? Ain't never had that, never will. I'm thinking to myself, what happened to this poor guy? Did his dad get taken out in a grenadine truck? Why the hostility? It's great. Oh, so
With that said, I hope you have a nice little shot of grenadine here tonight in your margarita. Did you ever get any grenadine?
I did
You
actually
you
at the
did. Okay.
Food Lion. Yes.
Okay, that's good. I'm happy to hear. Otherwise, I'd send you some because I can probably locate some around here in Kansas City. So,
Okay.
Simeon, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Abe. Anytime, Abe. Always happy to chat with you.
All right. Take care. We'll speak soon.
Bye.
What a character Simeon is. And I'm so happy that we had the opportunity to sit down and chat with him, a little peek behind the curtain of comedy, and of course, just share his unbelievable talents with all of you. We're very lucky to have him in the Royal Caribbean family. That is for sure. So thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great day, and we'll see you the next time around.